It's 4 o'clock in Los Angeles. It's 6 o'clock in Dallas, Texas. And it's 7 p.m. in New York City. Hello, everybody. I'm Mad Dog Scipio, joined as I am by Amelia, the Pitbull Chapman. She showed up again, damn it. Welcome, Amelia. And our returning guest for this week, amazing guy. Dan Lazader is a Pulitzer Prize winning author. Got a bunch of books out there, a shitload of articles, and he's one smart cookie, and I like him. He's my best friend now, by God. How you doing, Dan?
Oversold again.
Yeah. I'll sell you. I'll oversell you all day long. Oh man. Well, listen, this guy. Ah man, this is what happens when you trust somebody from TikTok. We were supposed to have this whole week, by the way, was centered around a guy named Skip G, who it looks like skipped
Skip
Skip
the
out.
our
Oh.
show this week. Skip is a Kennedy assassination expert, and he really is very good. But he ain't shit right now because he never showed up this week. So, pardon my language, folks, but fuck him. We don't need him. We got Dan Lazader here, by
That's right.
God.
Maybe it
And
was
we're
too
gonna
hot.
have some fun tonight. We're gonna get right into it. When we left off last night, Dan, we were talking about some of the conspiratorial evidence, if you want to call conspiratorial stuff, even evidence. But it looks like more and more these days, conspiracy theorists turning out to be more right than the rest of us. It looks like. Which is a scary proposition. We're going to see some photos tonight. I called this show tonight JFK Assassination the Players. And tonight we're also going to do the evidence. Can a case be made? We're going to see and I will read off some names of the characters, some of the key players in the Kennedy assassination. We're going to talk about them tonight. Because this was a lot of moving parts to make this happen. The odds of one person pulling off a presidential assassination on this scope, on this level, is slim to damn near impossible, unless you've got a lot of help. And we're not talking about William McKinley, who got shot on his front porch at his house. We're talking about, a very popular president with certain factions of the populace and a guy who was loathed in some parts of the country. Dan, let's get right into this. Talk about the players involved here. I highlighted some key names here. I wanted to go over maybe about 5 or 6 of them with you. And Amelia, feel free to jump in. Guy Bannister, Melvin Belli, Liz Carpenter. A name that was interesting to me, Charles, listen to this one. Charles Harrelson found out that he is the father of actor Woody Harrelson.
Right.
We're going to talk about him. I had no idea. That was a shocker to me. Malcolm Kilduff, Karen Kupcinet, of course, was Kennedy's mistress. We'll talk about her involvement as well. Sam Giancana, Jim Garrison, Jerry Golden, James Files is the name that comes up a lot in this quagmire. James Files comes up a lot, as does Jesse Roy White. Is another name that comes up a lot. And Charles Nicoletti is a name that's been bantered around a few times, along with Malcolm Perry and David Perry, no relation. There's just a few of them, Dan, so we can go over one at a time. Guy Bannister, who is he and what was his involvement?
Guy Bannister, as I recall, was the private detective out of New Orleans who had associations with various Cuban organizations that were active in Florida and Louisiana at the time of the assassination. That all goes back to the investigation by Jim Garrison, the district attorney in New Orleans, who was the only one to ever bring a charge against anyone in the Kennedy assassination. I, interestingly enough, back in 1967, when I was starting work on a small magazine on my college that was affiliated with my college newspaper, I decided that I'd see if I could do a story on Jim Garrison and his investigation into the Kennedy assassination. So I picked up the phone and I called his office, and as luck would have it, he answered the phone himself, and I kept him on the phone.
Oh shit!
Oh wow!
We had a good conversation about what was going on, and that was my initiation into following matters about the Kennedy assassination.
May I say something at this point? Thank you, Skip G, for fucking me over, because I got the better of the deal, jackass.
I know, right?
Now, I have heard that name. I've heard that name, Guy Bannister, but not just with regard to the Kennedy assassination. His name comes up in Chicago as well, like a month earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're seeing and hearing a lot of the same players. It would seem to me, call me crazy now, Dan, call me crazy, which I'm a little loopy anyway, but I digress. But again, like we said last night, so a lot of these names are repetitious. Garrison, Bannister, Perry, David Perry, oh my God, Oswald again, Ruby, Melvin Bell twice. He's a lawyer. What the hell has he got to do with this shit?
And a very famous lawyer.
Very famous lawyer. We actually covered Melvin Belli on our Zodiac show,
yes,
with some scrutiny with a microscope. Actually, we took the deep dive into Melvin Belli. Yeah. Brilliant to the point of excess, and a man who enjoyed his excesses. Very over the top, very flamboyant, had a ton of money, earned every dollar of it, I'm sure. But talk to me about, I want to go over these characters here. A guy like Melvin Belli, his involvement with JFK.
Well, and that's not an area that I'm strong on, Angelo.
That doesn't have to be.
Yeah. But when you're talking about the various associations that Kennedy had, there are tentacles everywhere that lead you to lots of interesting questions, and
interesting people too.
Yeah, some very interesting people. My familiarity is more with organized crime out of Chicago and the interest that they had in perpetuating themselves politically. And that's something that's not talked a lot about, I think.
Well,
there was an associate out of the Chicago mob in the era of Al Capone. And, my perspective is that Al Capone never ran the Chicago mob, that the mob was run by Jake Guzik, a Russian Jew, and I think history will bear me out.
Sure. The Chicago Syndicate, for all intents and purposes, used Capone as a front man, but Meyer Lansky, and who was based out of Florida, practically lived in Chicago. Mickey Cohen, people like that. And I have a connection to Mickey Cohen and Meyer Lansky, and I'll tell you that straight up. Because I know Meyer Lansky's son and grandson.
Yeah.
And Mickey Cohen is the reason I'm alive right now.
Really?
He gave my father several $1,000 for an operation I needed when I was a child.
Wow.
And and I will not bash organized crime. In fact, one of our shows here on the network is called Mob Talk.
Yes.
And so I am steeped in mafia tradition. So you're in good company, brother.
Regardless,
He is.
regardless of what you think about the things that have happened and the decisions that were made by people inside organized crime, it's still an interesting subject of study, and I
Yeah.
think important to know how those how those
Yeah.
relationships work, because even dating back into the 20s and into the
Yeah.
30s, Chicago was very active in the political circles, and Murray the Camel Humphreys was essentially the
I know that name.
lobbyist for the Chicago organization, and
Oh,
very
I
close.
know that name, brother. Let me tell
Yeah,
you what. Oh man, you got to be of a certain age or ethnic persuasion to know who that individual is. I want to talk to you. We spoke last night, you and I, Dan. I'm going to get serious for a second here. We spoke last night about Chicago being, for all intents and purposes, we're going to call it the epicenter of the Kennedy assassination. Of course, it really was, for all intents and purposes, where everything started. You had a bunch of pissed off gangsters who didn't get what they thought they were going to get. In fact, were turned around and berated by the government, particularly the president's little brother, who created a bunch of shit for John. Bobby was a troublemaker. Let's just call it what it is. He was a troublemaker, and not very well liked in the halls of Congress at all. And we're going to talk about that, and you know what I'm talking about. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But it seems to me that all John Kennedy or his affiliates had to do was do the right thing, do what you say you were going to do. We would have never, 61 years later, we're not still talking about the Kennedy assassination because there would have been no assassination.
yeah.
So, for all intents and purposes, and I'm going to do this, you can say, Angelo, shame on you for doing that. But guess what? Bobby Kennedy's the reason his brother got killed. Straight up, I'm going to call it. That's the reason John got killed. Bobby's big mouth.
Take a look at the turmoil that was going on at the time within the Chicago organization.
Oh God, yeah.
And I don't know how much of this has truly been publicized or published, but there was a situation within the Chicago organization that was much like the one that existed during the Capone era. Tony Accardo was running the Chicago organization.
Yes, sir.
And Sam Giancana was much the way that Capone had been, the person that was more out front and was getting eventually more headlines. His affair with Judith Exner and Exner's relationship with Kennedy put them all in the same circle. You had Frank
That
Sinatra.
was a woman with a big mouth.
Yeah. You had Frank Sinatra and the LA Cruise. You had very close association between the Chicago and New York organizations and Las Vegas and Hollywood. And so many of these connections were running back and forth during this time. It was not long then after Kennedy was killed that Giancana himself was killed in his kitchen while he was cooking some sausages. And the person that committed the crime was someone who could walk into the back door and not be suspect.
They say, Dan, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
That's right.
Sam Giancana apparently did not heed that advice that was given to him. Judith Exner is a name we hear repeatedly in various scandals, not just the Kennedy assassination. We should point out who Judith Exner was, okay? She was a woman for hire. We'll clean it up. We'll call her a woman for hire. she had powerful political connections because she was sleeping with them all and providing services for cash rendered, or as it were, providing diplomatic services, because she was listed as a diplomat, which I thought was hilarious when I read that.
Was she
Dip-
involved with
quote
MK
unquote.
Ultra?
Say again.
Was she involved with MK Ultra as well?
Judith Exner?
Yes.
No.
No.
Judith Exner was not, well, peripherally, but
Mhm.
Judith Exner was essentially a prostitute.
Mm.
She was a woman for hire. That
Mhm.
was a friend of Sinatra, a friend of Kennedy,
Mhm.
friend of Peter Lawford, you know, the early Rat Pack.
Right.
Okay, so you see what circles she's running in.
Oh yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
And Dan, let's talk about her. But here's the thing about her. The minute law enforcement came down on her, she cracked like an egg.
Ooh.
She opened her mouth and she started spilling names and dates and how much money I got from this guy and how much I got from that guy. And we've got a chat room full of people.
Yes.
Holy
The
shit.
only reason I asked if she was involved with the MK Ultra is because they used a lot of those type of women on politicians to try to get them to talk. That's the only reason I asked about that.
or to try to compromise them.
Exactly.
And there
That's
was
more the case, Dan, to compromise them.
Mhm.
certainly there was a lot of that activity going on within
Yeah.
the intelligence community on
Wow.
throughout.
Wow.
So let's talk about her, Dan. As it relates to this, is she a footnote in history, or is there more to Judith Exner than guys like Gerald Posner wrote not one but two books
Wow.
about Judith Exner and her exploits? Not one but two,
Jeez.
for a woman that was basically, for hire, a hooker. You can call her what you want to call her.
Yeah.
A call girl, a madam, whatever the fuck you want to call her.
Mhm.
She laid down with men for money.
Mm.
Okay.
No,
No, I'm sorry, folks, but there's no kind way to call somebody a prostitute other than
Yeah.
say she's a prostitute.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
the sex trades have been very much always a part of the foundation of finance for organized crime. Vice has been the subject of criminal interest because while organized crime might be engaged in all kinds of interesting activities, there's certain foundational things that have always been in place, and of course that environment moves through the political circles. When
that's why they call it, Dan, laid, made, and paid, baby. That's it.
Wow.
If you look at the foundations of the Chicago organized crime itself, it goes back to the First Ward and to various clubs there and to the recruiting of women into the houses of ill repute. And it was that environment where also labor unions got their start, with street sweeper unions and small unions that individuals who were engaged in these vice rackets also controlled. So you see a lot of roots to the sorts of situations that we had later, and then as that expanded into entertainment and into the theatrical industry, etc., those connections we don't see aren't visible, but they are important because it's a network beneath which helps facilitate communication between elements that may be beyond the law, above the law, or beneath the law.
Yeah. Another name, Dan, that comes up an awful lot when we talk about the Kennedy assassination, particularly among the real characters of the Kennedy assassination, is David Ferrie, portrayed brilliantly, by the way, portrayed by Joe Pesci in Oliver Stone's JFK. It's scary how much they had him looking like the real guy, too. Strange looking guy with one giant eyebrow across his forehead. again, a guy, is he a footnote? Does he bring anything meritoriously to the assassination?
I think, I don't think that we're likely to ever know exactly what Ferry's role or position in everything was, but he certainly drew a lot of attention in the Garrison investigation.
He
You
sure
know,
hell did, and I'm trying to figure out why.
and despite all these characters and their association with the underworld that existed and their association with the intelligence community, I think the most interesting out of all that is the individual who inspired the movie itself, and that was Fletcher Prouty. And
Ah,
Fletcher Prouty was the
that's on my list.
he was the liaison between the White House and the Joint Chiefs of Staff
There you go.
at one point, and he was very well versed in the intelligence community, and so he was memorialized in the film as the individual that Kevin Costner as Garrison talks to on the bench in Washington D.C. about what's really going on behind. Fletcher Prouty he wrote a book on the assassination, the CIA, Vietnam, and the plot to kill Kennedy. And his book, it goes back to examine history, beginning with efforts after World War II to place military equipment in Southeast Asia to get ready for what was to become the Vietnam conflict. And he was witness to a lot of history in the creation of the CIA. And so I think that as interesting as Garrison's investigation was, Fletcher Prouty's history and his work trying to expose the roots of the intelligence community's involvement in the assassination is also extremely interesting.
Well, interesting to say the least. That's the understatement of the decade, brother. Another name that, as I said at the beginning of the show, Charles Harrelson, Woody Harrelson's father of all people. I want to take a minute and tell everybody what I know to be true. Woody Harrelson did have a relationship with his father, I believe, until his father passed. He did speak to him on occasion, as I read, but Charles Harrelson was a petty criminal, in and out of jail most of his life. How he had even time to have a family is beyond me.
Wow.
What do you know about Charles Harrelson and his involvement? He was basically a petty criminal, right?
Well, I guess he had been a petty criminal, but he went to prison for shooting a judge, as I recall.
Yeah, he killed a judge.
He assassinated a sitting court judge.
Yep.
I don't know a lot about his background other than to know that he went to prison and that he was mentioned on numerous occasions as someone who ostensibly was on the grassy knoll when the shots were fired in Dealey Plaza. So whether he was there were a group of individuals that were photographed in that arena along the railroad tracks there, called hobos, walking along with police officers, ostensibly, although some people have suggested that uniforms worn by the police didn't look like the standard issue Dallas police uniform.
Well, we're going to actually see something tonight, so don't tip the hat on that one too terribly much. What are you laughing at, Amelia? And then lastly, and I have a lot of names here, but I just highlighted just a few.
Yes.
That I wanted to talk about. Now, I had a chance to interview this guy's son many years ago, Clay Shaw Jr. I spoke to him years ago. I want to talk about Clay Shaw, his involvement, who he was really, because there was some speculation as to who the hell Clay Shaw really was. He's a guy who we know changed his name at least twice that we know of. his involvement with the Kennedy assassination, with Lee Oswald, with Jim Garrison, with with David Ferry, and he's largely based out of my understanding, out of New Orleans, like the Louisiana area, but
Right.
largely in New Orleans, and I forget the name of the parish, but they don't have like neighborhoods, they have parishes, they're called in New Orleans. So what do you know about Clay, other than he seems to be the chameleon of the crew?
Well, he was a businessman. He was, according to uh, how he was portrayed in the movie JFK, he was engaged with the gay community in New Orleans, associated with David Ferry and some of these other characters whose history has been repeatedly explored for their alleged involvement in the
He is
case.
also, Dan, linked, interestingly, and I wanted to save this one as a side note for you, because it's interesting. He does have at least one son I know of, because I interviewed the guy. But again, largely associated with the homosexual community, and his involvement with either a J. Edgar Hoover and or Johnny Roselli, who was a known bisexual at the time, as was, we know now, was J. Edgar Hoover. We know that the former late FBI director spoke of one thing and did a completely reverse turn on other things. Look, if you wanna show the exploits of prostitution, you corrupt the virgin, not a whore, right? You would think. Well, and it's the way it is. I mean, if you want to, and that's how we have to look at J. Edgar Hoover. He was, again, no secret here, folks. He was a hypocrite. Dan, talk about the hypocrisy of saying one thing, doing another, and cavorting with, known homosexuals. If you are the director of the FBI, and nothing against gay people, I got gay people in my family, and I love them all, and I have no qualms with that. I'm talking about a particular group of guys, three particular guys that manifest this group. Very small group, by the way. What do we know about Roselli, Shaw, Hoover?
Well, I don't know what their connection might have been, but I do know from conversations I had with people within the organization in Chicago that it was well known at the time that Hoover's proclivities were well known, and they were used as a weapon against him. And that Roselli was an individual who had top level ties. He was close to Guzik, Jake Guzik, as the organization was developing into its corporate sort of structure under Guzik's tutelage, and that of Accardo, who was Guzik's appointee to take over afterwards. But Roselli was liaison between many different groups and organizations, and so he had ties into Florida, to Trafficante, and into those circles, of course, through Lansky and a number of people. The interesting story, again, one not in the general public, but Charlie Guzik, who was Jake Guzik's son, was the subject of a kidnap plot in L.A. Back in the late 40s, and the plot unraveled when one of the plotters talked about their plan, and it was Roselli and a crew who went in and captured the guys that were going after Charlie Guzik. They put him on a train out of LA to Kansas City.
Right.
with guard, and they put the guys in a bathtub and broke their arms and legs as
Oh,
a lesson
Yeah.
not to engage even in the rumor of kidnap. But
Yeah.
so Roselli was active, working he played a significant role in so many things,
Yeah.
and that full story hasn't been told either.
Well, can we tell a little bit of it?
Well, I think there are so many interesting ties here, and when you're looking at the FBI under Hoover, and you
Right.
think about the activities that the FBI was engaged in,
Mhm.
so the COINTEL uh, program, in which the FBI was doing surveillance on publications and
Yeah.
organizations, nonprofits, things going on in the racial communities. They even went so far. I once filed a FOIA request and got more than 800 pages of documents when I was looking at the various small magazines that were considered radical that the FBI was keeping track of.
wow.
And they went so far as to recruit circulation managers at
Yeah.
magazines to let them know what bookstores were buying certain kinds of magazines and selling them, and who
Yeah.
the subscribers were. So the FBI was doing a lot of domestic intelligence in its work, in addition to all of the hype that went on with Hollywood's help about the FBI and the very upstanding sort of picture of the agency that existed at
Yeah.
the time. There were a lot of things going on that were not what we thought the FBI was or should be.
Yeah. We are going to take a look, Dan, at some interesting photos here in a few moments. But before we do that, you know what I wanted to do? Before I even do my commercial, Amelia,
Yes.
questions for Dan.
Well, I mean, I know that they had
This
Lee
way
Harvey.
you can't say, "Hey, you ignored me the whole show."
No. They, Lee Harvey Oswald was named as the person, but we're gonna say person because like that.
Right.
To me, normally they would have chosen somebody of color or Hispanic or different. Why a white person? Do you know? I mean, why?
Good question.
Well, if I were to speculate on that, I would say that Oswald's participation in whatever happened wasn't fully visible to him. As
Yeah.
he said, I'm a patsy. Well,
Mhm.
certainly Oswald knew the activities he was involved in were linked to intelligence interests. Certainly he had his connections, whoever he thought he was talking to, whatever he thought he was doing. I think
Yeah.
he was someone that was groomed
Yeah.
for a particular role. And maybe that role was to appear to be the person that he really was not, which was
Yeah.
an assassin. So
We are. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no. I was just to say I think that it could have been anyone,
Mhm.
but they would have had to
Yeah.
play certain roles and been in certain positions in order to be
Mhm.
potentially groomed to be who
Mhm.
they were.
Okay. Let us, at this point, take our commercial break. We shall be back right after a word from our friends at Shopify.
Your customers expect to buy what they want, how they want. So you need a commerce platform that's flexible, customizable, and crazy fast. Shopify Plus is built to handle the complexity of your business, so you can focus on your brand and deliver a seamless customer experience across every device, country, and channel. Save time by turning manual tasks into powerful automated workflows. Target key markets with local currencies and unlimited storefronts. Increase conversion with personalized shopping and checkout experiences. And sell out in seconds, knowing we won't hold you back. Partner with the best commerce platform.
And we are back. Amelia, what are you doing up there?
I don't know. I just came up here.
Where'd you get up there?
I don't know. I didn't do
You're
it.
not supposed to be up there. That's reserved for the important people. They get the big camera, by God.
Okay, so it's me and him.
I want to
then?
take
Me and Dan?
some I want to take some commentary from our chat room. Let's see here. One of the things. Oh, here we go. This is Willard from last night. He's back tonight. By the way, didn't the late godfather of New Orleans, Carlos Marcella, confess in prison on secret recording by the FBI that to having killed JFK for RFK kicking him out of to another country? Now, I know what he's talking about, and you know it, and I'm going to let you handle this one. But if you don't know what Willard's talking about, allegedly, Robert Kennedy had Carlos Marcella deported out of the United States, but he sent him to Mexico, not Italy. If you're going to deport someone, deport them to their country of origin, not the mountains of Mexico.
I agree.
I'll keep my mouth shut on that one. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I'm certainly familiar with Carlos Marcellus, but not specifically familiar with the RFK controversy about a deportation. I'm sure deportation was threatened with a lot of different people, and of course the power of government to get people in and out is well known. But Carlos Marcellus certainly was a significant player in that arena. The various franchises that existed around the country, the players who were part of the inside of the network of organized crime, like he was, like Trafficante, like the New York families, the Chicago organization, and Jack Dragnet out of L.A. Those sorts of people throughout. They were all part of a combine and a cooperative, and Louisiana had its own sort of highly specialized and prolific sort of network that which New Orleans has long been a center of international intrigue and activity.
Interesting stuff. I have to tell you, we are going to show some photos here now. Just to warn you guys, some of the photos that we have are a bit sensitive. I have to give fair warning if there are children in the room. If you are watching this on Amazon Prime TV, YouTube TV, Roku, Tubi TV, any of our television networks, you might want to move the kids. If you are on radio, listen to us anywhere around the world, and thank you for listening. Just bear with us. We will be as descriptive as we are allowed to be. That said, let's take a look at some of these photos, and we can talk over this now. Dan, we're looking at a composite of photos from the assassination itself. Let's go top left to right. Well, let's go around the horn on this. I'm looking at what appears to me to be a very convoluted scene. People are watching the president get shot in front of them, yet virtually no one moves. Why is that? Why is no one moving?
You would anticipate that people would scatter as they do now when gunshots are heard.
Yeah.
Of course, we know, as the record indicates, that they were spaced over a short period of time. So I suppose you could speculate that people didn't have time to react, but some people were steady enough in that crowd, including Mr. Zapruder, to continue to film or to continue to record photographs as those things were unfolding. It would be an interesting thing to know how thoroughly the investigation then into the assassination captured all of the photos that were taken that day.
There are estimated, Dan Lazader, to have been approximately 175,000
wow
pictures taken that day.
Really?
There were, yes, sir. And I have that number, and I have it actually right here. The other thing that was beyond surprising is the number of film the FBI was given that they dismissed, completely dismissed, particularly the one piece of film, the 13 seconds that could have changed history. The Orville Nix film shows the kill shot. It shows it.
Yes.
You can see it. We have it. We
Yes.
played it. No, but you watch it from across the street, Dan. Nobody even moves. They
Oh, wow.
don't even move. Watch this. Here you go. All right. This is the day in November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, that John Connally, governor of Texas, is sitting front seat right in front of the president. Secret Service is right in front of and beside Mrs. Kennedy. They are leaving Love Field. The same procession. In fact, you can see the same Secret Service agent next to Mrs. Kennedy on the running boards of that car. That gentleman with the dark glasses, his name is Clint Hill.
Mhm.
There is a woman here named Beverly Oliver. Okay. We got to talk about Miss Oliver here, Sean. Dan. We have to talk about Beverly Oliver. I want you to, everybody, just, if you have a television, take a good look at this picture. Look at her. That picture, by the way, was taken 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Really?
She was 77 years old in that picture. She says she's the babushka lady. I got a problem with that on many, many, many levels. Number one, the babushka lady in 1963 appeared in 1963 to be at least 50, 45 to 50 years old. At least that old. Okay. She also further claims to have taken this photo right there. By the way, interestingly enough, that photo, if you scrutinize it, you will find the killer because he's in that picture and you're going to see it. How, Dan Lazader, in your inquiring mind, which I love, I want to hear this one. How do you reconcile Beverly Oliver? The House Select Committee, believe her. She testified before the House Select Committee on assassination. No one even questioned her age. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Are you kidding me? Okay, look. Now, I'm not a mathematician. I'm not real bright with some shit, I'll be honest with you. But in other areas, I'm fucking genius, okay? I want you to understand that a 50-year-old woman in 1963, in all probability today, in 2024, would be like dead, okay?
Mm-hmm.
She'd be like really dead.
Or
All
one
right.
of our oldest living Americans, yeah.
Or damn wrinkly ass looking for sure. I got a problem with this. Why? Why did no one? Why would that's the question. Why would no one ask the question, Mrs. Oliver, how old are you? And
Well,
don't tell me that it's not polite to ask a woman her age.
I would think the select committee would put that off the table, right? Well, you would think that would be a normal question to ask, and
Call me crazy, Dan.
something looks amiss.
Call me crazy, brother. I just don't see it, man. I don't look at her.
Yeah.
She seems like a nice person, but I'm sorry, Beverly, I don't buy your story. But we do know that her association with that picture, she says she took the picture. We know that she's associated with it. She didn't take it. The person who took the picture was a woman named Mary, I think Mary Hodges or Mary Hughes. I think Mary Hughes. Am I right with the Hughes?
I'm not familiar with it. I'm not sure.
Okay, Mary Hughes took the picture. Why is it important? Because she was standing next to Beverly Oliver at the time she took the picture. That's Mrs. Oliver's Miss whatever you want to call her.
Mhm.
That's Beverly Oliver's connection to that photo. She was standing next to the. Yes, she was there, but she was a kid. She was just a kid at the time.
Well, the photo
She
looks
might
like
have been
it's not
10 or
from a
11.
low angle. I mean, maybe she did.
Well, she was probably 10 or 11, maybe
Yeah, has to have
11
been. Yeah,
at the time. Maybe 10, 11. And I'm being generous.
Because the lens is going straight out with the height of the fender in the back.
It sure is. Again, I have no reason not to believe that she's associated with that photo, but don't tell me she's the babushka lady. I'm not buying that story. I'm not buying that story whatsoever. I do have a question, and that you may have some knowledge about. It's this fella right here. His name's Clint Hill. You see, he runs, and he's the only person who runs toward the limo.
Right.
The other question I have is, can you see the man in the front of that photo? He's actually on his knees on the street behind a car.
right.
Right.
Okay.
That's a Ford Fairlane.
Yes, sir. It sure is. It's a 1962 Ford Fairlane, to be
There
precise.
you go. Right.
And because I know a little bit about cars, which brings me up to this question here. They say the story is that Jackie was heading for Dodge when she was, running off the back of the car.
Right.
And I can understand why she would want to get out of Dodge, but if I'm a wife and my husband is shot next to me and his brain matter is splattering everywhere, don't you want to hold your husband knowing he's dying he's dying? Don't you want to hold him? Don't you want
Absolutely.
I remember
Yeah.
there being speculation that it was as indelicate as this is, a piece of the president's skull that landed on the back of the trunk, and she turned around and reached for it.
That I heard that story. How plausible is that? Or was she just trying to get the fuck out of Dodge?
I don't know. It's I don't know if she ever said what her intentions were, but certainly the Secret Service agent Hill was there very quickly because
he was there.
was
he there. Yes, sir.
reacted.
We're going to talk about Clint Hill. I want to ask you the real question. And it has been speculated from that time, from the early 60s up until Jackie Kennedy's passing, because Clint Hill was still alive as of a couple of years ago. I don't know if he's still with us or not. But I will tell you that speculation was almost immediately that she was having an affair with Clint Hill. We have talked about that on the show. We've presented compelling evidence, circumstantial, yes, but compelling circumstantial evidence. What is your belief? Do you believe that she was having an affair with her Secret Service detail? She spent an awful lot of time with them. We know that.
I really have no idea and couldn't speculate. But certainly the relationship.
But it's so much fun, Dan.
Well, I know,
I know,
right? It may well be fun. But in a slightly different direction, as we're looking at these questions and contemplating what should have been or might have been, I think about those people who were on the front lines, responsible for investigating what was going on there and for bringing those answers out. And one of those individuals, whose name we almost never hear, was a man named Robert Gemberling. And Robert Gemberling was the senior agent in charge of the FBI field office in Dallas. You and I have talked about my discoveries about Robert Story, the Dallas lawyer and head of SMU's law school, dean in the 50s, part of the program that created the intelligence links that helped propagate the media with friendlies and help propagandize the American people. But Robert Story and Gemberling were well known to each other, and as a matter of fact, again, published in my most recent book, the Gemberling went to work for a small storefront bank that was owned by Robert Story after the assassination. He's something has been identified as something of a historian and expert on matters pertaining to the assassination. But I always found it interesting that he should go to work for a little bank that had all the characteristics of non-official cover for CIA agents. And
I would love, Dan, for you and I to do that show one night and do the deep dive on Robert Story and Gimmerling and really expose the connection between them and do the deep dive into this little storefront bank, which was, of course, the tip of a very, very large iceberg.
Yes, it was.
I would. Can you do that show with me? Can you come?
I'd love.
We could arrange that. Beautiful.
I'd love.
We have more photos. Here is one of the most famous photos of the Kennedy motorcade. The interesting question here is the motorcycle detail that was assigned to Governor Connally and the president and their respective spouses. If you look at that photo, the driver of the car is smiling. Everyone else is smiling. The only person who appears not to be smiling is Governor John Connally, who has two fingers up to his lips.
He looks nervous.
They say, what I have read says that was Connally giving a signal.
Wow.
I don't know. Again, speculation, rumor, innuendo. There's no proof to back it up, but it certainly makes you think. It makes you think a lot, in fact, because he survived that assassination attempt. And this picture is also taken from a very interesting angle. I don't know. Dan, when a photo like this is taken, give me some idea of the logistics. Is this the White House taking this photo, or is this from other sources?
I'm sure that the White House photographer, no doubt, was somewhere in the wings, whether he was on the motorcade. But this looks to me like it could have been a press photo, or that's a high quality photo.
Yes, sir.
It's not a snapshot taken by someone standing on the parade route, and it's
that's a very, very, very clear picture. Yeah, it sure is.
And it's elevated so that you can get a clear
looking down
view. So it's I've worked with a lot of photographers over the years at various newspapers around the country, and the best photographers were always the one that could figure out their vantage point ahead of time. So that looks to me like a good high quality press photo that was probably.
Well, I want to tell you what, it's interesting. Talk about logistics and forensics and eye of sight. Let's look at that picture again because I'm going to tell you what I believe. That photo, if you look at it and just look at it, is taken from almost like a crow's nest, like a sniper nest. If you wanted to pull off a kill shot, that would be the way to do it. Let me go a little further, and because I have some photographic assistance here. Watch this. What's that look like to you, Dan Lazader?
Well, it's hard to determine. It looks like a reverse blot test to me.
Okay, let's clarify things a little bit for you. What's it look like now?
Ah, okay. So from the grassy knoll over the fence.
That is exactly where that picture was taken. You're going to see 4 different variations of that same picture. By the way, I was the one who isolated that photo. Our people did that here at the show. And Amelia, you remember
Yes.
that show?
Yes, we did. We did that.
And the other thing is, I have an entire. I would love to send you a copy of the show we did. You can see the patch on his arm. You can see the badge. You can see his face. I'm going to even further clarify this for you to the point where, there you go. That's the color shot. The interesting thing in this picture, Dan, is there's not one, but 2 muzzle blasts. There are 2 men side by side, not one. Let's talk about that. It has been speculated because the president had 2 entrance wounds from the front. 2, not 1, 2. He had one here, one here. Then before that, he had an entrance wound here. You saw him go like this as they were coming past the Elm Street sign. Okay, he goes like this up to his neck because he's choking, and you can see him rocking in the car. He's doing this. As he's doing this, fire 1, boom, fire 2, boom, and back. Okay, back and to the left. He takes the shot. Okay, so if you watch, he's getting hit twice from the front. He's going boom and then boom, boom. Watch that. Take a little time and look at that. Okay, back to Beverly Oliver's photo. Can you see the shooter? Because he's in that picture.
So where do you see him, Angela?
I'm going to show you right now. We've isolated that. You ready? There he is right there. Right behind that fence.
Well, it would seem like a good bet.
There's the fence. There's that fence. By the way, everybody thought that the shooter was behind the first set of, there's 2 fences there, I'm sorry.
Right.
The shooter is behind the second fence. There you go. You're going to see this again. Right there. He is at the right behind the second fence. You can actually see his head sticking up. You really have to take some time to examine this picture. But what I'm so shocked at is that the president is slumped over. His wife is there. 3 guys are standing. There's no one is running to the car to help. Nobody, no police, no Secret Service. You got one guy, Clint Hill, is the only person. Are you shitting me? Then I found out why. Why wouldn't they move? Well, earlier that day, they were given a stand down order. Should anything happen, just in case, guys, fellas, just in case anything happens, Stand down. We don't want to make a scene in Dealey Plaza. Everybody got the memo except for Clint Hill. And if he did get the memo, he ignored it because his girl was in that car.
Interesting.
And that,
theory.
brother, let me tell you something. I got a lot of people.
Oh.
When I put that out over the air,
Mhm.
Amelia,
Oh
no.
yeah, we got a lot of emails and phone
brother,
calls.
I was inundated. You don't even know. Holy
You
shit.
know that picture that you showed with them in the car, the color picture?
Yeah.
When he was he was going like that as a signal. But I also noticed that the dent in the car was on President Kennedy's side.
Yes. Let's take a look at that. I'm glad you said something about that, Mil.
Hmm.
I want to take a look at this.
See that dent right there?
There's
So
a dent in that car. That's the presidential limo.
Hmm.
That limo's dented, Dan.
It certainly.
Why is the presidential limo dented?
I don't know.
it could
But,
be if you can't get my signal, then you'll know that he's on the side of the dent. That could be another way.
I
to-
don't. What I don't get is all of these people that when they saw the shot, when the president goes back and to the left, because he goes, it's one motion. He goes boom, but he goes back this way,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
That no one moved. One man, and that's because his girl was in the car. Jackie was in the car. Yep. And if again, this is you can see here's the black and white picture. There's the second muzzle blast right next to him. And you can see in that photo, as clear as I can, because I know what I'm looking for, the shooter is a redhead man wearing glasses, wearing a Dallas police uniform. There is, even in that picture, as grainy as it is, that color photo that's from an original, by the way. You can still see he's wearing a pair of glasses. The other thing we're going to talk about is this picture here that has raised more than a little controversy.
Mm-hmm.
More than a little controversy. This is the limo. There's one problem with this picture, though. It's not the president's limo. It's the wrong car. Let me show you what they did. See that car?
Yes.
There's a whole row of seats missing from that car.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, Mad Dog. Oh, no, there's other seats in that car.
No, just the
No,
front
not.
and the back.
Show me. The other thing is, it is alleged that there is brain matter on that back seat. I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, it is as fabricated as the story of Lee Harvey Oswald. I will tell you, there's no brain matter. That looks to me like a Hollywood wax job. I think that they were more involved in this than people realize. Kennedy had a lot of connections in Hollywood. If you want to get out, if you want to save your ass, what do? You die and you go into hiding.
Yes.
I believe fervently. And here comes my conspiracy coming out. Dan Lazader, let me lay this one on you.
Okay.
Jack Ruby, Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay. Dallas Police Station, November 23rd, 1963, the very next day. Okay. Coming down into the garage. These two guys look at each other. They know each other. You could see this on film. They look at each other like, oh, fuck. Hey, or as if to say, holy shit, or hey, I know you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the look, right? Okay. There's a police officer, a very large police officer, standing behind a very short Lee Harvey Oswald, because he wasn't a big man. He was only about 5'6", somewhere around there, 5'6", 5'7". But the guy behind him is a good 6'3", 6'4", big Texas boy, right? Of course, they grow them big in Texas. And Ruby comes up to Oswald and he plants one in his gut. Okay.
Right.
I got several problems with this scenario. Number one, how'd it get so close? Who let him in? What's the end game? That's my first question. Those three questions are my first question. The second question is, how does Oswald, a small man, small in stature, thin, take a bullet to the gut and the guy behind him doesn't get hit? Because it's a through and through no matter how you look at it.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, very few people, very, very few people die from gunshot wounds to the gut
Correct.
because they're survivable. Unless you take one higher up in the chest, you probably got a pretty good chance of surviving a shot to the gut.
Right.
Because there's really not a whole lot down there to fuck with, especially a through and through. It's going to go in and out.
And what was the gun? A 32?
Let me tell you something. You can't kill a rabbit with that fucking gun, okay? You might wound him, but you ain't going to kill him. That's like that Carcano rifle I showed you,
Right.
okay? That fucking gun ain't killing nobody. In Italy, they call that a weapon of love, not war. That's what Cyril Weck said. Dr. Cyril Weck, who, by the way, I had the pleasure of speaking to. Great guy. Smart guy in his 90s. He's still around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he still lives in Pittsburgh. But I have to tell you that's kind of bizarre to think about that. Like, nobody's thought about this stuff at the time. And it just happens to be, Dan, call me crazy, just happens to be an ambulance on standby? What?
That's too suspicious. No.
What?
Especially since the local funeral home, ran the ambulance service for the county.
Thank you very much.
O'Neill Funeral Home.
You want to know why I love my brother Dan Lizette? You want to know why I love this guy?
Why?
Because we're twin brothers of different mothers. Okay,
That's right.
We share a brain. We share the same, which is a scary fucking thought, Dan. But
Maybe he should help us if we do another episode of Benoit. You never know, right?
Chris Bentwood, no, please. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Well, clearly Ruby had his connections to the Dallas Police Department. And he was,
absolutely.
He was well known, and so it's possible that he could walk in. I would say security around a press event where there are press people that not everybody knew. It's pretty, I think, reckless for them to have had Oswald, a suspect in the killing of the president, out in the open like that, or in an area that was so accessible. That seems pretty reckless. But Ruby had his history that certainly makes him, in my mind, a key element in understanding what really happened.
The question of logistics. We saw it with Donald Trump in 2024. We heard about it in 1963 with Lee Oswald. The question of logistics. Okay. Oswald is allegedly working at the Texas Book Depository building. Okay. He's working allegedly on the 5th floor, somewhere between the 4th or 5th floor. He comes to work that day with purportedly curtain rods inside of a blanket. Keeping in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that there's a presidential visit that day, and the Texas Book Depository building is swarming inside and out with FBI personnel and snipers on roofs nearby and that roof as well. Yes, there was. Nobody talks about it. We're going to talk about it. How, Dan, how do you get a rifle or any weapon of substance into a building on that day as high as the 6th floor without somebody saying, "Can you open up that blanket for me so I can see what's inside?"
Well, security regulations in the book depository building may have been a little more lax than in other places, but
On a presidential visit?
I think if you were going to put a rifle on the 6th floor, I don't think you'd do it at the moments before you were going to use it.
No,
So,
I think the rifle was already there.
well, or it was there sometime afterwards. You know, there were disputes about where Oswald was at the time the shots were fired,
Yeah.
and one report that he had been downstairs at a Coke machine, as I recall.
Yeah, he was buying a Coke. He was getting ready to have lunch, as it
Yeah,
were.
yeah, but
Well,
you know, those things still
I
remain.
have a problem with that on a couple of levels, and I'm going to save the best for last, though, because I got something I want to show you. J.D. Tippit was a Dallas police officer in 1963. This is J.D. Tippit. That's John Kennedy. I want you to take a look at J.D. Tippit. Take a very good look at J.D. Tippit, because you're going to see him again. That's John Kennedy. That's J.D. Tippit. Any questions? You got questions, Dan?
No questions.
You're gonna watch this one. That's John Kennedy.
Doesn't
That
look like
is that opening on his neck. That opening on his neck. It was purported to be, or I should say, reported to be an entrance wound. I'm sorry, it was purported to be a trach. I assure you, it is not a tracheotomy. That is a botched attempt right there. That's a botched attempt to cover up an exit wound. He was shot from behind. The bullet came out this way. It did not go in this way. I made an error when I said, because I should have thought about what I said, and I just went with it. But this was not an entrance wound. When he grabs himself like this,
Right.
that was an exit wound. It was
Came
a
from
bullet
back
coming
here.
out.
Mhm.
Okay. Even a high velocity weapon at the time would not have done that. It would have been a hole. It would have been essentially a hole. Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. That's a botched attempt to cover up that wound. They're saying it's a trach. I've seen tracheotomies. That's not how you do a trach. Even a first year med student could do a better job of a trach on someone.
It's a little high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look at it. You
Yeah.
don't do a trach that high up.
No, it's a little bit lower right in
It's
here in between
right
those
there
two.
at the wings of the
Mhm.
breastbone. Okay, that's John Kennedy. You're going to love this one, Dan. Get ready for this. Who is that, Dan?
Well, are you saying that's Tippit?
That's J.D. Tippit.
Wow.
That is J.D. Tippit. Why do we believe that? Well, first of all,
The picture that you showed
because
earlier.
it says J.D. Tippit on the photo.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but it does. It's also the official autopsy picture of J.D. Tippit. I want you to look at that again. Look at the president. Okay? Look at that picture. Look at Tippit. Look at the president. Look at Tippit. Okay? There are several problems with these pictures.
Are you saying that both of them are JD Tippett?
Nope.
Nope.
That's the president. That's Tippett.
Hmm.
Okay.
Wow.
What's the problem, Mad Dog? I'll tell you what the problem is. J.D. Tippett was photographed like that. He was not photographed laying down. He was photographed as if he were standing.
Oh
You
my
can
God.
clearly see he was lying down.
Yes. 'cause
There
of
is the
that
head
thing.
bracket.
Yeah. 'Cause
Okay.
the tables. Yeah.
On the table. All right. Now,
Mhm.
if you look at his throat, under his chin, where his throat is, you're going to see a very, very poor attempt to replicate that
That.
tracheotomy.
Hmm.
Okay. But the problem is this one's too high, this one's low.
Too low. Yeah.
They're done in two different spots. And how can you really tell? Well, you take this picture and you flip it sideways. Okay.
Hmm.
And I can do that for you if you like. Let's see. Let me see something. Let me see if I can do this for you. I think I can do this for you. Let's see. Well, let's flip it to the right. There you go. I'm gonna open this up here for you. We're gonna do that. Hold on, folks. I'm getting this something from my friend over here. All right, here you go. Tip it. We're gonna do that right now, folks. Here you go. Here's the same photo from the side.
Oh yes, I see what you're talking about now.
Okay. Very, very poor attempt. Look at this again. Just
Mhm.
look. Somebody did a really, really piss poor job. Actually, really bad job.
Oh yeah, you can tell.
Not to mention that the president's ears are very different than J.D. Tippett's ears. And you could go down that rabbit hole because
Mm.
you know your ear, believe it or not, is like a fingerprint. There's no two people that got the same ears.
No.
Strange, but I found that out. What do you think about all this crazy shit? Conspiracies, imagination, or did this poor bastard, sacrifice himself for a cause that he wasn't aware of?
Well, certainly we're still talking about this after all these many years, these decades that have passed.
Yes,
and
sir.
that tells us that I think it tells us that there were stories that were left behind, that there was misinformation and disinformation about what happened and what the evidence was. And so
Well, that's an understatement.
Right.
and that's why we continue to wrestle with the mystery of it all these years later, is because we
Yeah.
can't find the definitive fact. The autopsy photographs, the controversy over the body being moved and the autopsy being conducted in Washington, the different surgeons that took a look, and the different testimony and what was repressed, all those things just leave us with more confusion than clarity.
Here's a question. Wasn't the Secret Service agent Abraham put in prison for exposing the plot to kill JFK in Chicago? Do you know anything about that?
No, not familiar to me.
That's a new one on me. I'm
No.
not familiar. Plus, didn't George Bush Sr. back when he was vice president, after President Reagan being shot, go on live TV and say no more need to investigate the shootings, just a lone nut like Oswald? Yeah. Well, how would he have that information before it happened?
All right.
Or right after it happened? How did they know Hinckley was a lone nut? There was no information that even suggested that John Hinckley was a loner. In fact, quite the contrary. His family said he was very affable, very outgoing. And everybody wants to know about Chris Benoit. Well, folks, this is the Kennedy show. This show is about John F. Kennedy's assassination, not the death and or murder and or suicide of Chris Benoit. However, if you would like us to do a Chris Benoit show, write to us, let us know what you want to do, and if you want to come on and join us, we can do that. But as of right now, I have no plans to bring another Chris Benoit show unless I get substantial and overwhelming response to do so.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Other than that, Chris Benoit, God rest his soul, is a wrestler who died that I can't help bring him back. I'm sorry. And I think is everything that has been said about Chris Benoit has been said. What can I add to that? Kennedy, I can add to years on this because we're not even close. And I think, you know what? Now, let's talk about this real quick, Dan. I just said something and I caught myself in the middle of it. That we could talk about this for years, but isn't in the final analysis, isn't the Kennedy assassination really very simple? Isn't it really a simple proposition? Some powerful people wanted this guy gone because he was going to do things that interfered with their agenda. Isn't that the gist of it?
It seems to me that that's the more plausible explanation than that a single individual would have the wherewithal to be able to kill the president in those circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't seem.
You got to work really hard to pull that shit off.
I think they would have had a tough time convincing a jury of 12 to convict Lee Harvey Oswald had he survived all the way to the point of being tried in a court of law.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you what, brother.
Yeah.
But the picture, and I'm not just doing this because I'm the one who isolated this, but this really speaks. This really speaks volumes. And this one here is just like it's crystal, as fuzzy as it is. It's crystal clear what's going on there. It's two guys dressed up like cops taking a shot at the president from, interestingly enough, from this angle.
Right.
Funny, isn't it?
Well, you know, another famous case in American history involved people dressed like police, and that was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Chicago.
Oh, that's another rabbit hole we could go down. There's a lot of moving parts to that story, too, people don't know about.
And
I know a lot about mob history.
Certainly that motif has been used in many circumstances and many situations to accomplish something people wanted to accomplish.
Dan, where can people get a hold of you if they wish to email, website? What do you got? Tell everybody what's going on.
You know, I'm on X now. I still don't have my website up. It's almost done. I'm still working my way through that, but
I would have had that shit up and on it for you. You kidding me?
Yeah,
I should have called you to help instruct me on how to get it done, but you know, I'm working on this film project.
Easy stuff. I do that stuff blindfolded.
He does. I swear he does. He does it real quick like this.
Well, I'll have to hire you as my consultant.
But, you know.
But anyway,
I'm here, brother. I'm here.
I'm out there at dluzatter@gmail.com. So I'm pretty easy to find. So.
All right. And he is a gentleman. All these times I've called him Luzader, and it's
Luzatter. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've answered it to it so many different ways that, you know, it just becomes second nature to me.
Well, no, I want to do justice by it, you know.
Luzatter with the A sounds like an E.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Amelia.
Yes.
You are up. What's coming up?
We have the last and final part of the JFK assassination tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Tomorrow, yes, we do. I have. I think you know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do something special. You know what? I just said something a few moments ago. You know, why don't we do this? Willard, I know you're still in the chat. I know Gigi is still in the chat. Why don't we do this? For you guys, I'm going to do a Benoit show for you.
Yes.
Okay? There you go. I'm eating my own crow here. I'll do it. I'll do a Benoit show.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Neil.
And on the 28th of October, Monday, we're going to do a simulation theory. Are we living in a simulation? Is it a game?
Yes.
Or are we real life?
Are we pawns in a giant video game?
7 p.m. Eastern time. Absolutely.
Because if we are, man, I got to get a better avatar. Because
Right.
this thing is
Mhm.
fucking ugly, boy. I want a handsome avatar.
Yeah, don't make me sick all the time.
No.
Come on.
I like to have a normal sized nose over here, you know. I look like Julius Caesar without the money. Go ahead, Neil. What else we got?
And the 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to talk about stuff that's hidden in plain sight.
Oh, Dan
Again.
Lazatter would be a great addition to that show. Dan.
Best place to hide anything is in
Yes,
plain sight.
absolutely. Right in front of you.
Oh, hiding in plain sight, brother. I'm gonna tell you what. That's a show we got to have you on. That's gonna be a good
Oh,
one.
absolutely.
What else,
then-
Neil? What have we got? Oh,
And to end our month,
Halloween. What we got on Halloween? Mischief
well,
night.
on the 30th, to end our week, for October, we have Tamara Thorne and Aleister Cross, two great horror authors that are going to be joining us.
They
for that
write
podcast.
some serious gothic stuff. I'll tell you
Yes.
what. Dan, this guy, Aleister Cross, the smallest book
Mhm.
of his that I have, the smallest book is over 600 pages.
Oh, wow.
The small one.
Yeah.
Now, there's a prolific writer.
Yes.
Oh man, does he like to write? He's got an amazing. I want to send it to you too.
Mhm.
I want to get this to you. I just turned on Lacey J. Dalton to his books.
Oh, yes.
He's got a series called The Vampires of Crimson Cove. I think, what's it, Amelia? Volume, how
Yes.
much now? Volume 7?
It's 6 now because his paperback
Oh,
book
number
just released
6.
now, so we can buy it now.
Okay, volume 6 he's on. I have the first 4 volumes.
I
I'm
didn't get to
lagging
volume
behind
5?
because no. You
I'm
know
sorry.
why?
Uh-huh.
Because I'm busy doing research and working for this fucking show I got to do. Jeez, people want me to do Chris Benoit shows, and I want to do other
Well-
stuff with my
Oh,
brother Dan.
And that same
Um,
week, November 1st, we're going to have Hercules Kevin Sorbo on the
Kevin
show.
Sorbo,
Special
actor
night.
Kevin Sorbo, is coming back for a
Mhm.
second appearance, and I got a shocker for you guys. Are you ready for this one?
Mhm.
In 2025, I have one of the top rappers in the country joining us. His name is Unicorn 151. He is like the big thing right now in rap. He's going to be joining us to talk about the evolution of rap, how he got started, how you make money in rap, who you gotta piece off, who to stay away from, who to ally yourself with. And that's going to tie into another show that Amelia doesn't even know about yet. See, I have to book my own shows now, too.
Oh my goodness.
Is we are going to do the deep dive into P. Diddy, Sean Combs. We are going down the Sean Combs P. Diddy rabbit hole because I found out some information, verified information, factual information about a potential United States president that, if it comes to light, could be very damaging to this particular candidate. And I'm not saying the candidate or what they did, what he or she may have done. I will just leave it at that and say, be careful who you choose as your friends. That's all.
Absolutely.
And then again, I may just say, fuck it. It's not worth getting my hands dirty. Anyway, but we'll see. We'll see how I feel at the time. Anyway, but we will have Unicorn 151, and I'm going to have a gentleman on the show named, I'm going to get his name, Manny Rodriguez will be with us.
Oh, I remember. Yes.
Yeah, Manny Rodriguez is going to be with us. He is a music producer. Talk about what it's like. What do you got to do to make a hit record? What goes into making a hit? And does payola still exist? I know it does in the literary world.
Right.
Yep. Even Dan's going like that because he knows. Yep.
It's a vicious business, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you something, brother. The fact of the no, let's look. The literary world is a lot like the music business.
Mm-hmm.
There's shady characters running up and down the halls all day long. It's not, maybe it's not quite as blatant as it was, or then again, maybe it's like out in the open and nobody gives a shit. But we could talk about that one day too. I'm definitely going to bring Dan back. Amelia, thank you
Yes.
for filling us in.
Yes,
on
absolutely.
everything. Well, folks, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we will see you again tomorrow night for the third and final installment without Skip G, because G, he skipped on
He
us,
skipped on you.
and I'm okay with that. And I may just leave these pictures here one more time. But this is, I want to leave this with you. Let that sink in. Because they really do kind of look alike, don't they?
That's what I was gonna say. That they do kind of
They
look
do
alike.
look alike.
Like
Yes,
that
they
could be
do.
his son.
There's no accident. I
Yeah.
think poor J.D. Tippett didn't realize he was being the sacrificial lamb for the country, for the alleged greater good.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will we'll finish this rabbit hole tomorrow night. On behalf of Dan Lazatter, my brother from another mother, on behalf of Amelia, the Pitbull Chapman, I am the Mad Dog. We will see you tomorrow night, folks. God bless. Take care of each other. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.